virtual golf committee meeting for the town of Harwich. This is our first attempt at such a meeting, so bear with us. It won't be a perfect production, I'm sure, but we'll do the best we can. I'm compelled to share some information from the state through the town offices. I have to comply with this statement of information as we go forward, but we have invited guests of Roman Greer and also our liaison, Ed McManus, who was predisposed with earlier meetings. He may click into our meeting as well later on, but thus far he's not in attendance. But I want to welcome everybody. After the tornado this past summer, I thought I'd seen everything, but this coronavirus has certainly presented a challenge to everybody. In pursuant of what the governor's office has done, I have to read the following statement. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order and certain provisions of the open meeting law and the governor's March 15, 2020 order imposing strict limitations on the number of people that may gather in one place, this meeting of the Town of Harwich Golf Committee is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance or members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings as provided for in this order. A reminder that persons who would like to listen to or view this meeting while in progress may do so by entering the code 303-022-877 in coordination with the app known as GoToMeeting. If you do not have a computer and want to access the meeting by phone, you may phone 1-646-749-3122. Despite all these efforts, if we're not able to provide real-time access to the meeting, or should something happen in that event, we will post a record of the meeting on the city's town or the city or town's website as soon as we are able to. As far as the agenda is concerned, I posted that a week plus ago, and I put the addendum with all this communication protocol on the website. So it's there. It wasn't as timely as it would have been, but that information was shared with me only as early as yesterday at 11 o'clock. I have to go through a formal attendance query. So I'm going to ask each member to identify themselves. I'll start with Jack Conley. Jack, are you there? Thank you. Martha Duffy?
Yes.
Steve Bellata?
Yes, sir.
John Crook?
Yes, I'm here.
And John Wheeler?
I'm here.
Okay. And of course, our director, Roman Greer, is also in attendance with us. At this time, I'm going to lock the meeting in this way. We'll not be interrupted by people who may nefariously try to join the meeting as such. Also, the meeting today, because of time constraints, will be in the order of 1 hour to 1 hour and 15 minutes. There's another group that's going to use the same platform later on. So at this point, I'd like to go to the agenda, if you will. And first, I'd like to just mention the resignation of Tom Johnson, a longtime committee member For over 12 years, Tom served nobly on the board. He was part of the original replacement committee that maybe the entire group is not aware of, but at one point in time, the Harwich Golf Committee completely resigned en masse. It was totally vacant. So the selectmen got together. Individuals, and it's really been the start of what I guess you'd call the modern era. Tom had a stellar attendance record. It's testimony to the Jesuit influences on his life. He was a great writer, brought tremendous wit and dedication to the committee, I felt. He had a tremendous focus on veterans affairs. He inaugurated and orchestrated veterans events at the course, and those will continue, of course, on his behalf. So we look forward to seeing Tom again. He's been challenged with some medical issues that have prevented his continuing on the committee. So that vacancy in the future will be filled by the selectmen, and we look forward to his replacement. The second item is a review of the winter and spring work. And because of the time constraint we're in, I thought it might be appropriate to simply ask Roman to put a condensed bullet point informational memo to the committee. Roman, does that sound doable for you?
Yes, Clem, I'm happy to do that. I was really not very prepared with a review. The theme for tonight is, we've been so understaffed and kind of working right on the now and reacting daily to what we're allowed to do by the state, that I didn't really have much of a chance to go back and do any review. Our spring work was all dictated by the virus and the town reaction to it. They shut down projects that were in the works and procurement. And I'll share with you some of the screens in a little bit that our purchasing has been limited to essential only. So we've been very limited on any spring work whatsoever.
Okay, thanks. That's what I thought. I just thought it would expedite everything for us. So that brings us down to item C. And I had, if you can read between the lines, I had the CV opening protocols in collaboration with the town administrator and the town's health department. Obviously, we're open for business, but the protocols that were put in place, were subject to review by the town administrator and also the town's health department. And what Roman was able to broker is what we're witnessing today. So, Roman, I'm going to use that as a segue for you to elaborate on this opening plan and how it evolved and how these criteria were established, because I know a lot of people had questions about the timetable, and what you were able to do, what you weren't able to do. So if you would take it from there.
Sure, I'm happy to go over that. So let me just check the dates here. So I believe it was May 8th, the governor abruptly, was it May 7th, the governor abruptly opened golf in the state with no real notice. So golf courses were allowed to open, I think it was 10 a.m. on the 8th of May. That was a Thursday. We were able to get the golf course open that Saturday, so 2 days later. That took a lot of work with the town administrator, designing the protocols. Let me put them up back on the screen here. Can you see that document? No. Oh.
Yes.
Oh, wait a minute, I can see. Okay, sorry, one moment, different document.
You got to scroll that up, Roman.
Okay, here's the document. So this came out for Saturday, May 9th, opening the golf course. This follows very directly what the state allowed golf courses to do. And let me bear with you while I put that information up on the screen. I was asked on, let's see, that was a Thursday, the governor allowed golf. I was asked to develop a plan that evening to go to the selectmen for approval. And we received that approval in order to open on Saturday, May 9th. The document basically says we're members only, walking only. It talks about the cups have to be raised. The only personnel allowed on the golf course for staffing are security only, and their only job is to defend against and enforce social distancing. Let me switch slides right here. Okay, so this is from the mass.gov website that dictates everything we're allowed to do, even right up till this day. And, I know there's a lot of talk out there about, how different golf courses are interpreting this. I appreciate our town that they've interpreted this. And there's really no way around understanding how some of these golf courses are allowing business as usual and carts to go out freely. This is the guidance that's still in place by the state. And it basically says, of course, they're not essential, but if you go down to the, we cannot have employees working on the premise. So, we're the guidelines say security personnel only and maintenance personnel only. So we've been really restricted. This is still evolving how the town's interpreting this, right down to the fact that the town's health director was on a call with the Department of Health at 3 o'clock discussing outdoor activities, including golf. So this may be changing as we. But currently, we're limited by no access whatsoever to the clubhouse. No seasonal employees of any type other than for the security reasons. So the town's interpretation is very strict and to the letter.
Okay, Ron.
Now, on the following Wednesday, the state allowed to put out golf carts under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and so the town amended their plan to allow golf carts for folks that can prove their disability by either a state-issued placard or a note from a doctor. So if you go on to further down the list here, the state dictates tee times must be every 15 minutes. Online and remote payments must be utilized. So there's a lot of stuff that is really restrictive of our ability to operate. Golfers must use their own clubs. You can't rent clubs. Bunker rakes must be removed, ball washers removed, no putting green, no driving range, no chipping area. So this is the document that we built the town's document on, dictating our opening. Now that is evolving a little bit, and it's evolving as we speak. As I mentioned yesterday, I presented a plan to the town administrator for an expansion of hours because the original opening was for, they wanted to, in the town's eyes, we were the first town department to engage the public. So they really wanted it to be smooth. They gave us an opportunity to kind of set the example. And I attended a selectmen's meeting last week virtually where they really, gave a lot of praise for how golf opened and, it being the first town facility to re-engage the public was a big deal. And they really make sure we did it right and we took it seriously and we followed all the protocols. So that was very complimentary. From there, we're trying to expand the tee times because currently the tee times are from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. is the only hours the facility is open. that allows for tee times only up till noon for 18 holes and up till 2 o'clock for 9-hole rounds. So it's very limiting. We can accommodate currently 120 golfers a day. The plan that I presented to the town administrator yesterday was to expand those hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., and that would accommodate a total of 168 golfers a day and almost double the 18-hole rounds we're able to accommodate. So we're trying really hard to get there. I did not get that approval right away, and the reason is they're following these state guidelines to the letter that we're only allowed to have security personnel on hand and nobody in the clubhouse. And so we're really limited by the amount of staff we have, which are, as you so the three of us are basically in charge of opening and closing the golf course 7 days a week, which is limiting in the time we're available to have the golf course open. That being said, I've submitted a new revised plan to have some employees working from home, where they can forward the telephones to their home and they could have the point of sale system at home. So this is a document that's evolving hour to hour, and I'm hoping that we have an expansion of hours coming up shortly. This Saturday, we do have a tee sheet that's representing the new time from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., just in anticipation that we will get that approval.
Roman,
Okay.
is it still only members?
At this point, it would be for only members, and I'll get into details a little further down the line, but we do hope to start adding guests onto the tee sheet. We've had really brisk membership sales in the last 10 days. It's actually got to be record-setting. Let me get the numbers in front of me here. Since the 8th of May, we've sold 315 memberships, and this was as of yesterday. They're coming in like crazy. About $250,000 worth of memberships have been sold in the last 10 days. So we really want to expand the Tee Times for members to give them some value for these memberships that they're purchasing at quite a brisk rate. Obviously, at some point, we have to start adding some guests onto the tee sheet. But, you know, with the math, it's pretty easy. With Tee Times every 15 minutes, you're putting 16 golfers on the golf course an hour. That's not a lot of golfers. So even if we expand the hours from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m., we're still going to be very limited only to 168 golfers a day. So the beginning plan is to have members only, and we're hoping to add on some guests.
Hey, Roman?
You'll see. Yep, go ahead.
This is John. What does it say in the governor's regulations that we can only go to 4 o'clock?
Okay, that does not say that. When we first opened, that was determined by the town administrator that he wanted to staff it with the current staffing levels and only shift of employees in order to have for that to be the opening situation.
So it's predicated on manpower?
Yes, and that's still our limitation is manpower.
Pay those people overtime then?
Overtime has been taken away by the town selectmen. So that's another thing we're getting into. Our town administrator is going to be in executive session with the town selectmen tomorrow to hopefully approve brief overtime staff to resume weekend mowing, because going into this holiday weekend, we have no maintenance staff scheduled to mow or rake bunkers Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So we do have them tentatively scheduled on our side, pending an approval tomorrow by the selectmen. It's a townwide order, no overtime.
Who's making these decisions? Is it the town administrator or the selectmen?
Selectmen.
My God.
Selectmen?
Don't they have any idea of what's going on?
I've been involved in a few of the selectmen's meetings the last few weeks, and they're really very conscious of the revenue shortfalls the town's seeing. So they put they've really put limits on spending.
Sure, but do they understand that Cranberry Valley is one of the few revenue generating functions within the town, particularly when and if we get it open to guests, and that it doesn't take too many guests at the rates that we charge for golf and/or carts to cover the cost of the staff needed to support those guests and generate that revenue. And basically, with all of the revenue losses that the town is going to incur from tax collections and everything else, if there's functions within the town that can actually work at a profit by spending a little bit of money on staff, that's going to, and by doing that, by generating more revenue than that staff costs, an overall win for the town.
Good point, Steve.
The sense I get, okay, is that the town is more focused on payment than it is revenues.
All of the proposals I put forward all have to do with adding staff to the schedule, and none have been approved at this point.
Martha?
Roman, how many members do we have presently now compared to this time last year?
I don't have the historical numbers, Martha, but we are, as of yesterday morning when I ran the numbers, we were at 712, and the total number of members last year was 1,141.
Okay.
So we're at about 2/3, roughly.
Roman, a question on the times, the proposed new tee times. I get the front end with the 7 a.m., but does the 6 p.m. mean you have to be off the course by 6 p.m.?
Yes, that's correct. And once again, that's all due to staffing. They're requiring us to have security personnel to police social distancing the entire way around the golf course. No congregating while anybody's on the property. So we have to have security staff on property till every guest leaves or every member leaves.
Roman, could I ask a quick question, please?
Yes.
Roman, could you amplify or clarify, did I understand this correctly? You have not been allowed to hire part-timers to fill some of these gaps in order that you can conduct the business of the golf operation. And that's also true of Sean Fernandez?
So we have been allowed to hire minimal staffing levels for maintenance because maintenance, according to the governor's order, is allowed because then they consider that a safety issue. So normally we're up to about 15 maintenance staff right now. We're currently at 10, which is what we considered the minimum available. Actually, we're 11 if you count Sean. So we're at 11 in the maintenance department. According to the governor's order, once again, it can be security personnel only hired on the operation side of things. Nobody in the clubhouse. So all of our scheduling and operations are based on hours we're allowed to have for security personnel on the golf course.
You know, I just want to follow up with this comment because I think it's vitally important. Once again, in my humble perception, we're seeing golf treated differently than other town departments. And I would suggest that it would be really important to find out, are other departments being held to the same standard? Because I've got to believe that is not the case.
I thought Roman said there's no overtime or there's no hiring.
That's what's been said, but Roman, are we sure that that's the case for all town departments?
I can tell you for a fact that that has been the case for all town departments. Now, yesterday, the governor announced the business is reopening, and he addressed beaches, and he addressed waterways and things like that. And those areas that were addressed yesterday are now able to ramp up and hire some seasonal staff. Golf was not addressed yesterday by the governor. It was told to follow along the original lines of the release 2 weeks ago.
Okay,
so we're still operating under what I just had on the screen.
And Clem, I don't mean to disagree with you, but to be frank, I don't think we should worry about whether or not we're in line with other departments in the town. again, we're a unique case in that we are self-revenue generating. And there's virtually no other functions within the town that generate revenue at or above cost. And therefore, I think the town selectmen and the TA are taking the lazy way out by making these broad stroke rules across the board that say, we're not going to allow any hiring. When you're in a financial, if you have an opportunity to spend money that's going to be less than what you're going to generate, then it's good fiscal policy to spend the money to generate more than that money to add to the coffers. And so with the rest of the town departments just makes it too easy and simple to make one broad stroke policy, as opposed to, wait a minute, all we're talking about is, can we expend some money that will afford us the opportunity to make revenue that's even it should be broached that way with the selectmen to say, don't just lump us in with everything else, which is just an expense area. Take a look at an opportunity here where we can, for outside of that normal order, where we can spend some money that's going to have an immediate return on investment of higher than that expenditure.
Okay. Roman, because of the time constraint, could we move to new business and take a look at the budget and revenue that I think, certainly there are all kinds of implications for
An email?
as we go forward. And I know that's really a tough area for you to respond to, I suppose, because limited activity at the course, but as best you can, please.
Sure. And Clem, before we move away from the last discussion, I just want to say, once again, I'll reiterate that things are really in flux right now. I'm presenting plan after plan after plan to the town for approval. And so far, I have not gotten an expansion approved, but I anticipate it to be. The real constraint that we're on is that security personnel only, and no clubhouse activities at all. In fact, the health director today told myself and the two other clubhouse staff we need to start working from home, which I'm, my whole life playing golf, I'm still trying to figure out how you run a golf course from home with 160 people at it. So, and supervised staff and all the things involved there. So this is really in flux moment to moment, and I'm presenting plan after plan. So I do have good faith that things will evolve. Like I said, the tee sheet for Saturday, we just went ahead and expanded it, even though we haven't had the approval yet. I'm anticipating the approval because, with our Chelsea system, we operate 4 days in advance. So in order for us to affect Saturday, we had to make the change today.
Well,
anyway,
just one comment on times. We've been notified. We just noticed in our email this afternoon that Kingsway is allowing tee times through 3:45 every day. So you can play from 3:45 on.
Roman, as far as the clubhouse is concerned, I understand the areas of the clubhouse, like the restaurant, the restrooms, et cetera, for non-access to, but your command center, computers and phone systems, et cetera, that's critical. That's a critical need for your operations. And I would humbly suggest to everybody, I just recently was at my favorite place, the dump, where I get bang for my buck. And I went over to, I just took a kind of loser lap through Link Hooper's area where his offices are. And there were people in those offices. So that's what I mean about the double standard. And I think
Clem, the one thing I would mention, if you look at the screen that I have up, once again, the dump has nothing to do with these specific golf rules that we're under. If you can see the screen, right in the middle of the screen, it says, again, security personnel only, and then it says club facilities not limited to the clubhouse, pro shop are to remain closed. So they're taking a very literal interpretation. I hear it all the time about all the golf courses that are operating pro shops and that have, a million people in there and regular, business as usual. We're following these guidelines to the letter.
Understood.
And, these guidelines aren't for the dump, they're for golf.
Understood.
Well, when do you get your next opportunity, Roman, to present your latest plan? And is there a way for us to provide you with support?
Well said.
Well, I can assume that I have the support of the committee. By the sound of it, to expand, I assume that you all are interested in us expanding tee times and hours of operation, and start introducing some guest play. That's obvious. We're at the golf operation. I've been writing up operational plans for the last month or two on how we're going to operate when we open. These state mandates have been difficult to get around, and once again, I appreciate the town for reading them letter to letter, but the state put out documents that were not specific enough and maybe too rigid. So they seem like they weren't really written by a golfer, and they don't really address all the issues of a golf course. So following them to the letter is very constraining. But I submitted a plan today. I plan to submit my edited plan tomorrow, and they just go directly to the town administrator. And he's been interpreting them with the health director. And if he agrees with my plan, he'll forward it on to the selectman and put a stamp on it. And that's what happened to the first one. And that I consider the plan since then have just been a work in progress where they have not been approved as presented.
Roman, when do they meet? When is that meeting going to take place?
There's no specific meeting. It's kind of ongoing communication.
Okay.
I do know, Clem, that I talked to the town administrator and the health director today about my plan, and they wanted to defer to the Department of Health phone calls that they had at 3 o'clock today that was discussing specifically outdoor. And they wanted me to talk to them after that call to see if any specific changes to golf came up. And so I have not had a chance to talk to them about that. But the town administrator did reference that he wanted to see what happened in the 3 o'clock phone call, if anything came with golf. So that could be a deciding factor. But there are many factors. So I do have a good plan in mind, like I said, to have us taking the next step of anticipating expansion from 7 to 6 p.m. And it'll necessarily include the hiring of some seasonal staff, whether they're working from home and using the point of sale system and answering phones that are forwarded from home or not. I really can't expand the hours of the golf course without some more help, because with just the 3 that we have currently as operations, full-time operations employees, we've been the only 3 working there all year so far. We can't expand the hours and still have a manager on duty. So my plan to the town, sorry I'm rambling, but my plan to the town really gives them the option to say, to hire some seasonal employees to work from home to be able to handle the phone calls and the bookings, or we may need to lift the constraint of having a manager on duty at all times, because we may just need to fall back on our security staff to close the golf course on their own manager, which, is unheard of for me. We normally supervise our employees throughout the day and always have a manager on duty for incidents that come up. So, but those are 2 parts of the plan that I presented.
Well, it's certainly challenging. If there aren't any other comments, could we go, Rome, to that budget analysis, or what we can get out of that?
Can't get anything out of that.
Can you see the spreadsheet?
Yeah, very good. Perfect.
Okay, this is not, this is just some very general numbers that I ran. I shared this with the town administrator and the director of finance a few weeks ago, and this showed that before we started taking the new memberships on May 8th, this showed what revenues were still anticipated for this fiscal year, and it compares it to what we took in last year's fiscal year.
Wow. Certainly significant.
I can't see it.
I'm having trouble seeing it myself.
You can see it and you can blow it up, John, too.
I can't see it.
Or you can.
What's the bottom line? What's it say?
Yeah, so I can go over the basics with you. The bottom line is this is before we reopened for golf, so this is a couple of weeks old. We were about $900,000 still in anticipated revenue for this fiscal year, which only included the months of April, May, and June. So we're almost at the end. The reason for that is about half that money is in memberships, but 318,000 of it is in green fees, 18,000 in range, 73,000 in carts. And so far, those numbers are 0, 0, and 0. So we're catching up on the membership numbers, but there's going to be a very large shortfall. In April alone, we collected 18,000 in green fees, 16,000 in cart fees. And once again, those are zeros this year. In May, we collected 88,000 in green fees and 34,000 in cart fees, 0 and 0 currently. So those are numbers we will not make up. There's not enough daylight in the day to sell green fees to make up for April and May.
So we're $1 million down from last year then in revenue. Am I reading this right?
I'm sorry, what's that?
I made 897,000 in revenue, if I can read this. Last year we were about 1.8. So does this mean we're $1 million?
We still were anticipating 897,000 in revenue over the next 3 months.
Right.
We were at about 1.89 million in revenues last fiscal year. Now keep in mind, we were going to be down anyway due to the tornado, the 10 days closed for the tornado, and even the impact we had for, a few weeks after where it was a slower opening or, just a slower period in general due to tornado effect. But, this spreadsheet basically shows, if you look at the April numbers, just green fees, range, cart, and the May numbers, so those are, we're not going to catch up on those. With the
Roman,
sheet, go ahead.
Roman, this is Jack. If I understand your spreadsheet, you're saying you expected 897,000, you're going to lose 897,000 minus 464 is not going to materialize. Is that correct?
Well, so in general, Jack, so as I mentioned earlier, we're at about 2/3 of, this part of the year right now is when we sell our memberships, obviously. So it's really the end of the fiscal year. A lot of the biggest chunk of our money comes in. And so because of this situation, it's delayed the memberships coming in. At this point, we're at about 2/3 of where we were last year in membership sales. So if you take that 484 and it's probably not the cleanest way in the world to say you're at 2/3 of it, but in the last 10 days, I told you we sold about 250,000 in membership. So we're catching up on the membership numbers. The numbers, if you look historically at last year's numbers, the numbers were really down. Or if you look at April and May's green fee numbers, we won't catch those up. April and May's range numbers, April and May's cart numbers, those are the numbers that were truly down at this point. The membership, we still may sell some, but I think we're going to end up at topping out at 3/4 membership sold. Just we're not anticipating having sweeps anytime soon, ladies league anytime soon. The fact that carts are so limited, I think there's a lot of golfers that are just, that I've spoken with, that are just going to wait until we return to something more normal before they take out a membership.
So your optimistic number might be around $600,000 is what you expect to bring in. Not even that. Well, $500,000, $300,000 in the next 3 months.
Yeah, so
You can bring
I
in
think you're getting closer there, Jack, because with the effect of the tee times every 15 minutes, and then the limited hours of operation currently, you know, it's really going to be difficult. And I'd really appreciate the golf committee has on this topic, which is what do you think is an appropriate amount to open up for public play on the tee sheet when, you know, we do have really brisk membership sales, and the memberships, you know, have reached over 700. We are heading into Memorial Day weekend, and we only have under 200 spots available on the tee sheet. What do you think is available? I don't think the old 50-50 split is fair, where that would be under 100 members playing the golf course each day. You know, I was kind of thinking of starting slowly and adding times a day. You know, and what I really want to see is have the members who have stepped up and paid their fees get some access to the golf course first before we start introducing public play.
Roman, question for you. What percentage of the requests for times have gone to overflow so far? I mean, I'm already on overflow, and it's the second week. I'm just curious.
Okay. Yeah,
if that number is high, then expanding it to guests, okay, is going to hurt the year-round members, the annual memberships.
That's why I'm really getting no real pressure from the town when I'm presenting these reports at this point to generate fee revenue. What I'm hearing from the town is really they're interested in public safety, that we can run this golf course in a safe manner. And then, yeah, it's turned into a joke that I keep talking revenue and they keep telling me public safety, public safety. I can answer your question about overflow. On Monday, we had 1 person on the overflow list. On Tuesday, we had 2. On Wednesday, 16. And on Thursday, we have 50. So as we get into the holiday weekend, I think we're looking forward to Friday. I think we were up to 64 on the overflow list. So for those of you that don't know, those are members who submitted for a tee time that were not placed on the tee sheet. Now, in all those cases, the one thing that I do want to try to get out there for members to know, there are 9-hole options available. So even with Thursday's tee sheet with 50 on the overflow list, there were 32 open 9-hole spots available. So members are really, you know, submitting for 18-hole tee times, but not utilizing the 9-hole options.
Roman, I like that idea. I like the idea of phasing in, you know, the paying customers. And it'll give us a month to review. If you're able to implement, you know, when we meet again in June, it'll give us a chance to assess, you know, how that has gone and what the satisfaction level is, you know, for the members as well.
Clement,
I think a key though. I think a key though is again finding ways, if at all possible, for us to support Roman's plans. Do things like expand the time frames. I mean, members will get frustrated going on to the overflow list, and a big reason for that is Roman's significantly limited in the slots that he has to allow people to fill because of that reduced time. I think we may end up losing members because they're saying, you know, I don't want to become a member and pay for a membership if the tee times are limited, which obviously they significantly are compared to normal, with an 8 to 4. With the services being limited, with the fact that we're not doing any carts, that we're not doing takeout from the restaurant. You know, there's lots of things that go into the experience of playing at Cranberry Valley that all have a cause and effect in terms of of membership and the number of members that are willing to pay for memberships and the general public. So, you know, I think we can't lose sight of the fact we need to enhance the capabilities in Cranberry Valley for both members and the general public. Just in general, just to make it to make it a better value, to make it more attractive. And part of my fear is with some of the other towns taking different approaches, are we losing members to other towns? Are we losing paying general public to other towns that we may have a very difficult time recovering, which makes this a long time financial cost to us?
Martha?
Yes, I'd like to bring up one issue that is not related to the budget, Roman, but it is related to health and people with disabilities. The inability that the course cannot provide bathrooms for people that are coming to play golf. There are people with physical Crohn's disease that have other disabilities that it's really imperative that people have a place to go to the bathroom. I know in Florida, we had bathrooms open. We sanitized ourselves. They were clean. We washed our hands. But I'm very concerned about that issue. And I'll tell you, from the number of people that I've spoken to, we are going to lose a lot of members that have been members for years if we can address these issues.
So Martha, I can address that, right? You know, nobody's allowed in the clubhouse, so the permanent bathrooms in the clubhouse are not allowed, and there's no access allowed by the state to the facilities there. Our health director determined bounce houses were not compliant. They didn't fit the state mandate.
Then what does the state mandate?
It is part of my proposal to the expansion of hours. Once again, is to address the bounce house issue, but our initial directive
comparable platforms to run for the town. My understanding is with the draft rules, there'll be all of the bath facilities will be closed at the beaches.
You know, that was part of the big selectmen's discussion last night. I got to admit, I'm not that. The state came out with very specific directives on beaches yesterday, specific to beaches. I'm not that familiar with it, so I do know that in their guidance for businesses opening, they put a lot of details on how to clean the facilities and how to operate your bathrooms. And once again, golf is everywhere you look on the state's website. It says go back to the frequently asked questions page for golf guidance, and it says no clubhouse.
No clubhouse, but it doesn't say no bathrooms. I mean, this document from the state is like any other document. It's open to interpretation, and my frustration is it's getting the interpretation is being done in a vacuum. It's being done by Department of Health, the director of the Department of Health. It's being done by the TA, by the Board of Selectmen, without thought, process, or input from others, and in particular, those who understand the game. I mean, I totally support what Martha said and would even go a step further. It's wholly unreasonable to expect a woman to go to a golf course to play golf for 4 consecutive hours and never have to use a bathroom. I mean, that's just absurd. It's different than the beach. It's different than the clubhouse. It's different than the town offices. And the people who are making these decisions don't seem to know and understand the differences. And somebody along the way needs to provide a voice to these people in their interpretation and direction setting. I mean, for whatever it's worth, the golf club I normally use in California when I go away for the winter, they came up with a brilliant idea that they're using across the state at golf courses, which is when you check in, you are given a piece of paper that basically says you're exempting the golf course and anything to do with the golf course for any liabilities whatsoever due to the virus. And by doing that, it allowed them to use carts, single person carts, but you can't get one unless you sign that liability. It goes the same thing for the bathrooms. People are expected to sanitize them themselves before they use them and afterwards when they're done, but they understand they're taking a risk and they're saying, I can't hold a golf course liable, but how in the world can you ask a woman to play 18 holes of golf and not use a bathroom? I mean, guys, we're easy. We go behind a tree. We don't care. But females don't have that option.
Well, that's,
I think you're missing something. I mean, Roman is.
thank you for saying that, because there are women that are going in the woods to go to the bathroom because they have to go after 4.5 hours of playing golf. And we have neighbors that complain about the men doing it. I mean, this is uncalled for.
Jack?
Yeah, I don't know whether we're missing it. I mean, my sense is Roman is making a lot of these issues that we're raising to the town administrator, the health director, and the board of selectmen. It maybe they're not listening or they don't want to listen, but I mean, it's not Roman that isn't bringing these issues up. I mean, he mentioned he's gone through and put out, umpteen plans to expand the use of the facility. And I don't know how you get through to those people, but it's certainly, Roman is not lacking for attempts to try.
Oh, and I totally agree. And I'm not trying to pass the blame onto Roman in any way. What I'm saying is, how do we help Roman? How do we support him? Can we meet with the selectmen? Where the hell is our selectman liaison that's supposed to be talking to the golf committee? Where's an open public meeting where we can, as citizens and taxpayers, even outside of the golf committee, where we can talk about these concerns and why aren't you doing more to help the revenue generation? Why aren't you looking at all aspects, et cetera? It's, this is being done in a vacuum, and the public needs to know, the taxpayers need to know that they're just trying to, I understand they're trying to be safe, but they're also, to be perfectly frank, they're trying to, again, put everybody in the same bucket. And you just can't put everybody in the same bucket. Every function in the town.
I have a question for you. Is there any means now virtually for us to have open forum during a selectmen's meeting?
Yes, I can answer that, John. There is, if you go to the selectmen's agendas, it gives you a number to call into, or if you have to go on their agenda, it may be an email. You email a certain email address, and then they contact you when it's open forum, and you're allowed to email in the question, I believe, or that you call in. But there is the public comment.
So in theory, we could develop something which someone then could read on that open forum to represent the position of the golf committee relative to these critical issues. And which I think, in one way, Steve, to your point, and right on, okay, is to provide support to Roman and his arguments.
Yep.
John Crook.
I'd love a copy of your latest proposal, Roman.
John Crook.
Yeah, I think we want to get back to the original question that Roman had, which was how we can kind of split up the tee times between members and guests. And I think what we have to do is go to Roman's best recommendation, which is probably to give more error to the side of the member for the next month or so, only because of the scenario going on. And I think the other question would be, what kind of demand are we getting from outside guests to play right now? Or is it basically nothing? And I think the other thing that somebody brought up about revenue, revenue is going to be hurting. The governor comes back with the phase 2 in golf, which is when you have 15-minute tee times, you're not going to get that many players on the course, and you're not going to get that much outside revenue. So I would definitely let Roman skew the tee times for the based on his good judgment in terms of what's going on. In terms of the restrooms, I think that point that Martha and everybody was talking about is obviously a very good one. I think it's going to be very difficult for us to get our point across to the on an open mic on a virtual meeting. I think what we should do is to put down a one-page paper, bullet points in terms of some of the things that we've been talking about today that would assist Roman, as well as giving a viewpoint from the government and how to move forward. Because I think what's happening is the town is more scared of Charlie Baker than doing the right thing for the town. So I think that's the issue that we have.
Steve, what do you think of that idea?
I think that's a great idea. And again, especially if you can tie it directly to Roman's latest proposal and do that one pager that John talked about to show our support. And then
I think we have to do it in concert with Roman, though.
Yes, I couldn't agree more.
Absolutely. Roman, what kind of timetable would you envision if we did something like that?
Well, I plan to present a plan to the town administrator tomorrow because I need to in order to comply with the T-sheet that we've put out for Saturday. And I basically jumped the gun and put a T-sheet out there that expands hours from 7 to 6, anticipating an approval, because I think we are close to getting one. Now, I don't know if you see my sheet here. This is just a very rudimentary sheet that I put up. Can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So we would go from first, I can't see it myself. Bear with me. Basically, that's an option to get from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., which would be more standard hours to work our way up to that. Once again, I'm completely constrained by employee hours at this point. Now, one thing that I may want to feed into this plan is that I haven't mentioned is we engaged tea time sales online companies and for bids in March, and we had a winning bid from Golf Now, and this was all in anticipation of this. We were really hoping to be ahead of the game and have a deal in place to sell tea times remotely, because my staff and I really anticipated that was going to be the only way to accept payments, and that's currently in the town's legal hands. That contract, it has been for quite some time. My plan was to bring in public play once that gets introduced, because any plan to introduce public players without that remote payment, it's really sloppy. All of a sudden we have people calling in with credit card numbers, and it gets really difficult. We can't, with the personnel we have on hand right now, we can't keep up with the phone volume. Selling 300 and some memberships over the last 10 days, we can't keep up with the phone volume. So it's all staffing dictated to this point. But I do plan to push the plan to the town administrator tomorrow, revised, and listen to him on what came out of this. I've already acted on it.
So
John,
that's just for the expanded time, right, Roman?
That's for beginning this Saturday from 7 a.m. to 6 p.m.
Yeah.
Roman, could I? Would you think it appropriate if we drafted just a simple note or letter from the committee endorsing these recommendations and underscoring, how important it is to act on this in a timely manner? I mean, the fact that legal has had that proposal for how long?
It's been a few weeks.
Few weeks. Well, I mean, now is the time. maybe it would help you as far as, them understanding more completely what you're up against.
And that could be very helpful. And I'd even want to ask you to add something specific to it because, the one thing I'm very uncomfortable about going into this weekend, as I mentioned earlier, is no maintenance staff mowing the greens Saturday, Sunday, or Monday. So that's going to be presented to the selectmen in executive session tomorrow. If you could draft a letter supporting, 3 hours of overtime for 4 employees each of those 3 days, we call that mow and go. That if that went to the selectmen, that's going to the selectmen for their hopeful approval tomorrow. If not, can you imagine playing on Monday on greens that haven't been mowed since Friday?
It's ridiculous. John Cook, John?
Well, I'm just thinking of the things that we talked about today very briefly, okay? Number one would be making sure that we increase the number of personnel working in the pro shop, which would include some seasonal people to give Roman and Mike and Dick relief. Number two would be the maintenance people that Roman just brought up, that we have to have maintenance people, number one, being able to work overtime, basically work normal hours that they work during the summer. Because I think the one thing that the governor has already said is that maintenance people are allowed on the golf course. You can do your jobs with safety guidelines in place. There's no problem there. And that's all to support the hours that we have on the course, which Roman wants to do from 7 to 6 p.m. I think one of the recommendations is going to have to be to open up the clubhouse to restrooms only. And I think by doing that, we're going to have some in place to be able to sanitize that restroom on whether it be an hourly basis or whatever the case may be. But I think you have to have a restroom available for a public golf course. I don't know what the other golf courses are doing as far as restrooms. And the other thing I think we talked about today was skewing the tee times between members and guests for the next month, giving a little bit more emphasis for the members only because of the situation that we're in right now. And then I think the last thing was that we talked about was Golf Now and having some type of remote payment and making that active as soon as we can. Are those the issues that we talked about?
Yeah.
Yeah, yes.
Yes, they are, John. Yes, they are.
Roman,
I have a question for everybody, and that I don't have a problem providing a document to Roman in support of his recommendations and the actions which he's taken. But what role does the golf committee, other than this document, play in this? For example, we're not going to be visible in any of the open forums. They won't hear anything directly from us. It's our role to provide only guidance to Roman, and then he reports out.
Well, my reaction to that is it's very difficult in this world that we're living in today to have a one-on-one feedback. It would be great if we could go to a selectmen's meeting and look them in the eye when we're saying these things, but obviously they don't care that much about revenue opportunities within the town. And I still think that revenue is still very important. You can't get revenue back. And I think you can get revenue and still maintain safety and safety guidelines at a golf course. And you can also sanitize and have no problems there, whether you're talking about people working in the pro shop or people working in the maintenance department.
Oh, and,
Jack Nyland?
I would second that thought that John has and say that I think one thing that we need to look at, if we're going to have that letter that says we'd like to see the overtime for the maintenance staff, like Robin says, to cut the greens and some more seasonal staff. I think if we just go in with just that, it may be interpreted by the TA and or the selectmen that, oh, you're just adding an expense in a very difficult financial situation for the town anyways. So I think we need to tie that with at least some public tee times so that we can generate that out-of-pocket revenue to offset that incremental expense. So, I mean, the ideal would be pay the overtime for the maintenance people, bring on some more of the seasonal staff, et cetera, find some way to deal with charges without the Golf Now contract, before the Golf Now contract gets signed, and show the selectmen and the TA that, hey, look, we're going to spend an extra $2,000 a week, but we're going to bring in $3,000 a week. And therefore, you're not going to lose any money. We're not putting any further burden on the town by doing this.
Understood. Martha, quickly.
I do agree, though, Steve, with what John said. I think we're in a very sensitive time in regard to members. And I think I would much rather err on really taking care of our members right now so that we can draw. You know, we've lost almost 300, 400 members. And I think
No, we
that
haven't. We haven't lost any members yet.
they haven't signed up. We've only had 2/3 of what we had last year, John.
Yeah, I know it, but I mean, just going based on past history, because I brought this question up to Clem too. A lot of the memberships are sold in June and July when people start coming back to the Cape.
Okay, I'll tell you right now, the people that I have talked to who have spoken to me are not signing up
Why are they
Right.
not signing?
because they don't like the times. They don't like the inability to have services there, such as bathrooms. The members are willing to follow the protocol. They come on the course with their mask. If we went into the bathrooms, we would wear our mask. I mean, they've been very respectful, and I think it's important that we give them as many tea times as we possibly can. I think we're going to lose revenue no matter how you look at it.
I hate to interrupt, but Martha, the comments are certainly appropriate. And Jack, I'm going to take your comments as kind of a last.
I agree. I agree with almost everything that people have said, but I guess my question is, we have a liaison to the selectmen, McManus, I believe is the person. I would be able to draft this letter, hand it to him, and explain the issues that we see, and that way you avoid this free-for-all that's, the selectmen meetings turn out to be. He's supposed to be a liaison to our committee. Why couldn't we leverage his influence or lack thereof with the selectmen to communicate with him directly rather than going through the selectmen's meeting?
I will do that. I can do that exactly, Jack. Roman, what I'm going to propose is that, you and I kind of reconnoiter tomorrow early. We can draft a letter. I'll copy everybody as far as the points that John has made, incorporating that in the text. And I will personally deliver that to Ed McManus. He lives just 3 streets over from where I am, so it's convenient for me. How does that sound to everybody?
That sounds
Through
great.
Roman, I think it's important through Roman that this gets to the town administrator.
Yes.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
Or whatever
Great.
it is.
And when you do deliver that letter, could you ask Mr. McManus, when is he going to start working with us? I mean, I've been on the committee for over a year. I've yet with the people you're supposed to liaise with in over a year.
He's I reached out to him this week, and I told him, I said I felt guilty because I hadn't done much on my end, to reach out to him. We had a very, very positive. Because I tried to, I tried to bring him up to speed as far as, what a challenge this whole thing has been. And he was more than receptive. So look, we're going to have to work it out.
Discussions.
I'll take a last comment.
Discussions with opening up the snack bar for to go?
Yeah, Clem, I can answer that one. So the health director, Ron Leidner, asked me to ask the health director if he was allowed to do curbside, if he was allowed to do the determination came back yesterday along with my hours proposal. No, he's not allowed to do either. I called him and discussed that with him this morning, and he said he was not unhappy to hear that because he said it would be a guaranteed loss to him.
Yeah, understood. John Crook.
I just want to make a comment. I think we should all thank Roman for dealing with all this, because between dealing with the state, with what Baker's been through, putting us through for the last 2 months, and then now the interpretation by the town, God knows Roman's gone through a lot to try to get to where we are today. So Roman, we appreciate this. And I think the bottom line is we'll eventually get there. We just have to hold on for a couple more weeks, I think.
Thank you, Roman. Thank you very much, Roman.
I've had some difficult hours. So my staff and I have had some tough hours the last few weeks, and it's very frustrating. And, you know, I appreciate your comments. You know, just to address one thing, Martha, you were saying about the restrooms. I don't know if I made it clear earlier. The health director at about 2 o'clock today told me our staff are not allowed to work in the clubhouse anymore. We need to work from home. So that part of my proposal tomorrow is to find a way to at least have one person. We're not allowed to enter the clubhouse. So that really threw a monkey wrench into things. So that's what we're dealing with. I'm obviously going to try to work around that, but that took me a little while to wrap my head around, and we'll develop a plan that tries to work with it. But it's very difficult.
Hey, Roman, I got a question on that. What's your concern there? Because as my interpretation right now is the only people going into the clubhouse are you, Dick, and Mike.
Right.
So there's no outsiders going into the clubhouse. So, I mean, what's the problem there? I'm sure you all keep your social distancing and safety guidelines. So, I mean, what's the issue there?
The issue is the very literal interpretation of the state guidelines, which says no clubhouse and only security staff only on the premises.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Okay, that's certainly frustrating to say the least. People, I'm going to have to wrap it up. Thanks for your time and attention. We'll look forward to June 16th, and at least through memos of communication from Roman, in the interim through the month, I'll try to apprise the committee of anything that's going on that's relevant or important. So thanks to everyone. We'll see you in June. Okay, thank you.